speaking more generally, the rules governing the handling of classified information are there for a reason, and people need to be very mindful of those rules. And unfortunately, the FBI has, as a steady part of its docket, a number of investigations involving mishandling. And the reason those rules are there is because classified information, if it gets into the wrong hands, can put human sources in jeopardy. It can put other kinds of intelligence collection at jeopardy. It can jeopardize our partnerships with foreign liaison services, which are really the lifeblood of the intelligence community in many ways.
Joining our coverage, Congressman Daniel Goldman of New York. He sits on the House Oversight Committee, is very familiar with the attacks and smears launched by Republicans today, as well as the judiciary's weaponization of the federal government subcommittee. Congressman, I imagine none of this surprised you from Republicans today, but it was stark and jarring watching them malign Donald Trump's appointee to lead the FBI as someone who has really seemed to want to keep his head down and keep the Bureau out of just about every debate in Washington around any of these cases. Your thoughts about his testimony in this hearing today?
Well, there was such a sharp distinction between what Director Wray was talking about in terms of the breadth and depth of the FBI's work, from counterintelligence to counterterrorism to criminal investigations to keeping fentanyl off the streets to keeping gangs off the streets to keeping Americans safe, versus what the Republicans wanted to talk about, which was really just two cases, Donald Trump's case and Hunter Biden's case. And it is remarkable that the Judiciary Committee and House Republicans more broadly are acting as taxpayer-funded defense attorneys for Donald Trump, and that the attacks on the FBI, the effort to defund the police in the form of the FBI, is all done in service to Donald Trump and in an effort to not only undermine the FBI and the credibility of the FBI with Americans around the country, but that's done to protect Donald Trump and then to attack the Bidens for purely political purposes.
You have focused in today on, I hate even calling him a star witness, but that's what he was, the Republican star witness in their efforts to reignite, I guess, the Hunter Biden investigations, has been indicted by DOJ for being a Chinese spy, among other things. You write this, you and Congressman Raskin write this to Congressman Comer, quote, "We are concerned that an official committee of the House of Representatives has been manipulated by an apparent con man who, while a fugitive from justice, attempted to fortify his defense by laundering unfounded and potentially false allegations through Congress. It appears as if Mr. Love sought whistleblower status from you in an effort to defend himself from criminal prosecution, while a fugitive from justice. Worse yet, this latest episode also raises concerns that Mr. Luff may be manipulating your investigation, not only for his own self-interest, but perhaps also in furtherance of the CCP's efforts to undermine U.S. security interests and the President of the United States." Tell us what I mean, this seems to go beyond politics and into, a real threat to the integrity, feels like the wrong word to use when I'm talking about House Republicans, but just explain your concerns.
Well, Chairman Comer is pursuing attacks and bogus, unfounded allegations against the Biden family with such reckless abandon that he has now wrapped his arms around and doubled down on embracing a former agent of the Chinese government, someone who made false statements to the FBI, someone who brokered weapons for oil deals between China and Iran, and who has stated himself that he is using his outreach to the Oversight Committee essentially to provide a defense against his indictment. Now, his indictment dates back months, long before Chairman Comer even knew who he was. But there are real questions to be asked, not just about the credibility of this whistleblower and all of the whistleblowers that the Republicans are relying on, but also whether or not the House Republicans on the Oversight Committee have been manipulated and used by a foreign adversary to undermine the interests of the United States government. It's a very, very serious issue that goes far beyond this particular investigation and goes to the heart of what this oversight committee is doing based on a desperate attempt to undermine and attack President Biden, against whom, by the way, Nicole, and I know you know this, there is not a shred of evidence to connect to any of these allegations, which in and of themselves are unfounded.
Help us understand sort of the depths of Comer's enchantment with this witness, because here he is yesterday, I mean, this news has been available to all of us now. Here he is yesterday still defending his indicted, charged with arms trading and dealing and spying foreign agent witness.
He's a credible witness because he worked for CEFC, just like Hunter Biden. I'm not saying Love's innocent or guilty. I'm just saying that he worked for the same company that Hunter Biden worked for, and I want to know what the company did and if he has any knowledge of what role the Bidens played.
This is I won't let go of my sinking ship kind of logic that is hallmark Republicans, I guess, these days. But what does this mean for the committee's work?
Well, you don't, of course, have credibility because you're in a similar circumstance or work for the same company as someone else. You have credibility because you tell the truth and because your information is corroborated and vetted. In this case, we know that he has not told the truth to the FBI. And let me tell you something, Nicole, from prosecuting cases in federal court for 10 years, the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, where I worked and where this case comes from, do not charge false statements lightly. When I was there, was lied to numerous occasions by defendants that we didn't charge false statements against. And that's because it's a high bar to charge them. So the credibility of this witness is not whether or not he was similarly situated to Hunter Biden, which I don't believe he was, but it's whether or not he tells the truth. And what we know is that he has not told the truth to the FBI. He's a fugitive. He's literally on the run. He jumped his bail and has not appeared for his extradition proceedings in Cyprus, I believe. He's on the lam trying to use the Oversight Committee to help him defend against very, very serious charges. And we have no idea what he's telling the Oversight Committee because Chairman Comer has not turned over any of the information that he's obtained from this potential Chinese spy to the Democrats on the committee.
Well, and I remember that was, I believe, your first request of your Republican counterparts on the committee, that they turn over notes from interviews with whistleblowers, I think many months ago. I know this letter asks for the notes and the transcripts of any meetings with Mr. Luft. I assume that is not something that the Republicans have started doing. Are you hopeful that they will, or are you holding your breath that you'll get their transcripts or notes from him?
No, we're not. And I think it's important to emphasize why we are so concerned about the whistleblower status that the Republicans are freely giving to anyone who comes forward with allegations against the Bidens. They are using whistleblower status as a rationale for not giving the Democrats information about these whistleblowers. That is not actually how House rules work, but that is the rationale they're using. And so they will close this criminal in the protections of a whistleblower so that they don't have to share their information with the Democrats on the committee. And we cannot investigate it, look into it, and assess the credibility of what he's saying. All we have is what Chairman Comer is saying. And we know that Chairman Comer is a master of disinformation.